Hi guys, welcome to the Laura Studios. This is another episode of Android Programming. Let's talk about Android Recapture API. The Recapture API is a free service that uses an advanced risk analysis engine to protect your app from spam and other abusive actions. If the service suspects that the user interacting with your app might be a bot instead of a human, it serves a capture that a human must solve before your app can continue executing. For you to integrate the SafetyNet reCAPTCHA API into your Android app, you have to follow these steps. Firstly, you navigate to the reCAPTCHA Android sign-up site from this link you're seeing right there on the screen, and you have to fill in the necessary details. You fill in the label, which will be the probably the name you're giving the reCAPTCHA, and the package names if you are developing reCAPTCHA for multiple applications. You have to lock in the package names, one per line, and you accept the reCAPTCHA terms of service. After that, you click on register to actually register that. You will be issued two keys, the site key and the secret key, which you will be using in the course of building your Android application. Right there, I've had my own keys, the site key and the secret key, and even the startup code, which will be helpful as well. You also need the server-side integration. That will be the step 2, where you need to send a HTTP post request with the parameters, the secret key you got, and the response that you'll be getting from the SafetyNet API reCAPTCHA token response when you call the get token results method. Without much ado, let's head straight to Android Studio to set up the code and the logic needed. Right there in Android Studio, we'll start up with the build Gradle and the dependencies needed. You need to include the Google Play Services SafetyNet 11.4.2. That's the latest at the time of recording. And you need to also lock in Volley, because we'll be using Volley for HTTP connection, where you need to push the parameters down to the API. For you to actually have the SafetyNet included successfully, you need to have Google Play Services and its repository updated. We're actually going to show you two major things that must be installed. The SDK tools, you need to upgrade your Google Play Services, which you've seen right there is quite installed, 46 version, and the Google repository, you need to upgrade that too as well. We have that as 58 version. Once you have that done, you're good to go. And in your build Gradle, the project, you could add the Maven google.com, and right there in the all projects, so it's actually going to point at Google link to actually pull down all these repositories. And you could also add the class path, the Google Services 3.0.0. With this, you sync Gradle and you have your application sorted ready. Right there in the layouts, you'll be having two layouts files: the activity main, which is handling the launcher, and the activity new, which will be for the second activity. After the authentication would have been done successfully, you'll be pushed down to the second activity. The first activity will just be a typical button where you could actually trigger the on click on that button called reCAPTCHA click. That will be the method we'll be looking at, and the text on the button will just confirm you're not a robot. That's actually going to trigger the reCAPTCHA. You could use this probably when you are actually filling out forms, and the users you want an authenticated user to register. You don't want just a bot, so you could actually add this up at the end of the registration to confirm if it's actually a real user or not. And you can also use this to actually block an activity from launching until the process is done successfully, so that you could actually get the good sizable amount of users going straight down to the activity. It's quite useful to actually block out spam and also verify the credibility of a user using your application and such. In the activity new, that's where you actually have the second calling activity. This is just simple. You have a text view just saying confirmed you aren't a robot. You've moved down to another activity, just to actually show us that you're actually going to move to another activity. That's the essence of this. And from here, you head straight to the Java classes. We're having the app controller. The app controller will be used by Volley to actually keep the request queue, so you don't have multiple requests to this server or to the API. It's actually going to make that happen intermittently. And the main activity is the launcher, where we're going to have the whole bunch of logic running there. You extend the app compact activity as usual, and you lock in two constants, the site key and the site secret key. You're actually going to get that from the page I actually showed you earlier. After you might have registered the application, you're actually going to generate the site key and site secret key. I'll employ you to pass through that process. And a string for the user response token, we actually made this global because we'll be calling this in different methods. So we actually make it global. So you have the string there. So you pass in the response token, which you actually going to get from the get token result. We'll get to look at that right there in the course of the application. In the create method, you call the layout activity main as usual. And now we have the method, the recapture click, where you pass in view and the object called v. This is just the way once you're calling an on-click method from the XML, you need to actually set it up this way. Pass a view and also its object. Now we are trying to interact with the safety net API. You call the client, which is this activity, to verify with the reCAPTCHA based on the site key you're passing in, and you're going to add on success listener, which will actually take this keyword, and you instantiate the unsuccess listener, which will take the reCAPTCHA token response generic object, and you have to vary two methods, the unsuccess and on failure. So you have that set up. When you have a success, there's going to be a response you'll be getting from the reCAPTCHA token response from SafetyNet API, and that response can point down to a method called get token result. So it's actually going to spit out a string, a bunch of string, and it's actually going to be the result of the token, which will pass that right there to use the response token. You see right there, which we've declared globally. And now, just to test if the user response token is not empty or it's not null, you could send a request. You validate the user response token using the reCAPTCHA site verify API, and you could send that request down to the API, the site verify API from Google, and that API needs two parameters. We'll get to look at the two parameters needed. And on failure, there's a failure one way or the other. You need to actually catch that when an error occurred when communicating with the reCAPTCHA service. I have to refer to the status code to handle the error appropriately. You have the exception you get, and now the status code as well. So you could speed that out to the log, the status code, and based on the string, you get the string of the status code. So you could know what happened or what transpired and what caused the failure. So that's cool. Now let's get to look at the send request method that we actually send a request down to the Google API. So we're actually going to cover that right there. Firstly, you will need the URL, which is the API URL pointing to the site verify link from Google. You have that set up, and we're going to be using Volley at this point in time to actually make this requests possible. We're going to actually make a post request and pass in two parameters, as I've said. Firstly, you instantiate the string request, and in the parameters for the string, you have the post, the URL, and you instantiate the listener, where you pass the string generic. And at this point in time, you have to vary two methods, the on response and the on error response. That's on failure. And on response, which will be probably it's been successful, you are expecting some JSON object. You'll be expecting the success, the challenge timestamp, the host name, and the error codes. The success comes in two values, either true or false, while the challenge timestamp will come, that will be the timestamp that the challenge was done or the authentication was done. And the host name as well, that's in the string. And the error codes, majorly, it's actually going to spit if there is an error somewhere, or probably the secret key is missing, or the response key also missing. You're going to actually have that spit out right there in the error codes. So those are the keys that you'll be expecting. So that's why you get the string of this particular key. We need the success, which will either be true or false. If it equals to true, definitely that's a success. You need to move to the new activity. So if not, just maintain the state, or you actually going to handle the error in the log. So that's just it. And now on response error listener, you have to override this response as well, and you could toast that, or you could actually make that to the log to actually know the kind of error that was triggered from the volley error. By calling the error get message. With this, you'll be able to know. And the get params, which you need to override, where you're going to actually pass in the key values you're putting down to the API using the map. There are two strings, and you have to throw the auth failure error. There could be an error while trying to put those keys as well. And the object of this map are generic. You need to put in the secret and the response. Now the secret key is this, while the value will be pointing at the site secret key we've actually declared as a global scope or as a constant up there. We have it set up already over here. And now the response will be the user response token, which you are trying to verify over here. This is actually going to be speeded out when you call the get token result after the recapture process was done successfully. You're going to have that saved to a string value, which is actually a global scope we've called out there, so it could actually be useful right inside this method. And you return the params object. Cool. With that, you set up, and you need to also add the request queue based on the string request object, which actually going to run all that for us. So if there's probably you've actually sent the response multiple times, it's actually going to be combined to one, so you don't have to hit the server times without number just for just one call. So I think that's what that is actually going to take care of. The add request queue is actually out of the box from Volley, which is like an helper class to actually help that done. Now the move new activity. This is actually going to usher you to the new activity, the calling new activity after the verification might have been done successfully. You're actually going to push down to a new activity over here. That is, if the object you get is success, and that success must be equals to true, not false. If it's false, that means still it's not successful. But once it's true, that means there's a successful callback, which you could now usher to a new activity. I think this is quite cool. You could manipulate this to suit what you really need it for, but you just have to understand the endpoints, the key points that you need to actually get callbacks, and where you will be able to manipulate the logic to suit your application, to suit your need. So that's just what you really need to point out at. And with this, you set and you're good to go. Right there in the manifest, you only need to lock in the internet permission and the calling activity, the second activity used, which is the new activity. You have to actually add that to the manifest, which is the metadata of your application. With that, you could test out for the first time and see what you got. Open up your logcat and get different callbacks if there's an error or so, and if it's successful, you what you're expecting the application to do, you have to get that done to actually know that it's successful. I'll be showing you a screencast of this application, and at the same time I'll be uploading the source code to the GitHub account, and I'll be sharing the link right down the description page, so you could pick up the link and also clone or download the application from GitHub. With this now, I'll be signing out. I'll say thank you for hanging out with me throughout the tutorial, and please Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Have a blessed time. Bye bye for now.